With only about a week and a half left on Haru's banner, let's go ahead and go over everything in her kit, everything that revolves around her, and whether or not you should actually be pulling her. Haru is a primarily single target Justice or Blue nuker. She builds up high multipliers and everything revolves around her spamming out her anchor shot for some big damage. With that said, let's take a look at Haru's basic cards. She's only got 2 here that I would really keep. Power Anchor here is a 2-drop and it has a pretty decent multiplier, giving a slight buff into anchor shot. But really not a big deal. Her basic attack is whatever. This one is actually an okay attack. I usually wouldn't get rid of this first, but I would want to get rid of it eventually. And anchor drop is a really crappy shield. But then her bread and butter, which she starts off with, is her anchor shot. This is a 2-drop, has pulverize, so bonus damage onto shields. A lot of her stuff has pulverize, and just the fact that anchor shot has pulverize, meaning she's going to be really good into content that has a lot of shield, like the Great Swamp. Has about 250% damage, and then on base it gets a 60% permanent damage boost for the fight every time the card has been used. And looking at Anchor Shot's Epiphany, she's actually got a lot of great options here. The only one I'm going to point out specifically to just on its own, this one is really bad, of course, unless you have a very specific team built around this. So like Veronica Cassius, if you can get like max hand size like every turn, then this is pretty good. It boosts the cost of Anchor Shot by 1, but then it does slightly more damage, and then it gets 100% more damage for each card discarded from other combatant cards, because it discards all other combatant cards. So if you are able to draw like a full hand on average, you're probably going to get at least 500 to 600% damage boost out of this. So that is very good, but if you somehow get her deck really, really small, and you draw nothing but other people's cards, then you can get this up to 1,000 plus very easily without any other buffs. The bad thing is it is a 3 cost, so it's hard to argue for this one. So overall, this one is usually pretty bad. And how good each one is also going to maybe slightly change based on how many dupes you have of her, which we'll get into later. But the first one boosts the damage at a higher rate than it does at base, and also gets boosted damage. So 90% instead of 60%. We'll jump over to the 4th one here, which is the same base scaling rate, but you create another copy of it into your draw pile twice per battle. So you play it once, you get a copy, goes into your deck, you draw back again, you play it again, it creates another copy, and now you get 3 copies of Anchor Shot to end up drawing. So I like this one a lot because you're able to see it a lot more often. So in longer content, if you can actually scale this, then this one is pretty good. But in general, it's hard to argue with the combo one. So combo is if you play another same attribute card. So she's blue, so if you play another blue card, period, and then combo will be active on the next card played. So you play, I don't know, a Mika card, you get 1 AP, then combo's active. You play a Owen card, combo goes away, but it gives it an additional hit. And you really can't beat that. Off rip, you don't have to scale this whatsoever. It just does almost 600% damage on its own, flat out. And that is hitting twice, so any percentage or additive scaling boost that you get is going to be very good, which she already does for herself in her own kit. So ideally, the combo 1 hit is the best one, especially when we look at the basin content where you need to clear things in a very short amount of turns. You're not really going to have time to build up anything anyway, so the combo 1 hit is the best. And then the crit to return to your hand once per turn, this one's alright. I think this one is pretty good if you have her second dupe, but otherwise it's not too great. Anchor Pointer here is a very simple card. You just draw from your draw pile or trash Anchor Shot, so you get to get it back again. So if Anchor Shot's in your trash, you play this out, you get to play it again before it would come back naturally, which is really cool. For every Epiphany Anchor Pointer has, the one that I like the most personally is the 25% crit chance added to the Anchor Shot that you draw back for 1 turn. This is pretty good. It's going to pair with her gear nicely later on, so you can guarantee that crit a little easier. But if this is multiplicative, then the 20% damage is probably what you want to go for. Everything else is kind of eh. Retrieve is nice if you know you don't have enough AP to play Anchor Shot, so you can just leave it, don't play it, and then you'll have it for the next turn to get an Anchor Shot back again. Granting Anchor Shot Retain, I'd rather just stack up damage than try to wait out more turns and let enemies scale even further. And then the same with Anchor Shot Retrieve, it's alright. Again, if you have the second dupe for Haru, this one will be pretty alright, but overall if I had to get one of these Epiphanies, I'm going to pick the crit or I'm going to pick the bonus damage. But honestly, I love the generic boosts on Anchor Pointer instead, like being able to apply vulnerability, getting morale, whatever. Those are pretty good. Again, unless this is multiplicative, then this is better than morale. But vulnerability, it's hard to argue with that. I got one with vulnerability and it is very good. Next up is Power Charge, a 2-drop AoE attack. But if they are single target, you get 80% more damage. So this is her only AoE in her kit. It still has some pretty decent single target damage. But overall, when it comes to single target purposes, you want to see Anchor Shot over this 100% of the time. So this card is more for your downtime. This one is going to be very specific as far as what you want this to do. If you're wanting it for farm content, if you're wanting it for a specific fight in general, they're all good in their own way. Me personally, I like the combo changing this card's cost to 1. It makes it a lot easier to play on any turns. Again, I love the generics. I have a build which is pretty cool. This also has vulnerability on it. But yeah, the 1 cost is pretty good. Again, if this multiplier is multiplicative, then this is pretty good. But because it is per hit to the next attack card, I'm pretty sure this is additive. Otherwise, that would be a little broken. Defeat activating 1 more time. It's all right if you know that it's just something that you're going to be able to, like a farm stage that you can wipe in 1 attack, then that is very good. And yeah, these 2 are also pretty solid. Again, I like the combo change the cost to 1. This one is pretty good though, guaranteeing break damage onto any elements, and then just getting a boost onto the damage and the single target damage. So there is that. But overall, I think just being able to make this easier to play is very nice for most content. Now, Charge Energy. I thought this card and the next card were both ass, but these are actually multiplicative multipliers. So that is times 30%, not adding 30%. So this is actually really, really good. And she's going to want a lot of buffs. So you can change this to either 40%, pretty good, 50% damage, 1 tenacity damage to the next card used. If this is multiplicative, then it's crazy good. I actually don't know which one of these is additive now or multiplicative, so this one is a lot harder to judge. Alright, I realized we can test here. So for this one, it says for 1 turn plus 70% attack card damage by number of cards in hand. If this is actually as good as it sounds, then this should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 7 is 48, 56, 560%. So this should go to 805. It's at 245 right now. And it went up 70%. So it looks like it only counts hardest cards in hand, and it doesn't count itself. So that's pretty bad. So that doesn't really answer my question as far as what is multiplicative and what is additive. If I have to assume anything that is higher than 30% is going to end up becoming additive, and anything below that is going to be multiplicative. So on base, it gives you 30%, which is very good. So 40% honestly looks like it's probably going to be the best one. You can get this one that's draw 1 for 1 turn and just keeping that 30%. Or you can make it so all of her cards will have 20%, but it will be an upgrade, so you can remove it out of the deck. This is okay. I feel like you're sacrificing a lot of multiplier though compared to the 40% here. As long as this remains multiplicative, this one is by far going to be the best one. If not, this one will at least retain its multiplicativity. So this one is going to be pretty solid, and the upgrade is going to be up to you whether you want to remove it out of your deck. But yeah, so I'd probably say in that order. You just want more damage. And these 2 are just, if they're additive, then these aren't too great. 1 tenacity damage, who cares? 50% damage, not too crazy. And then, yeah, this one sucks. And last, we have her mythic card, whatever they want to call it for the rarities. No epiphanies, 0 cost for Anchor Shot in hand, plus 1 cost, and plus 70% damage for 1 turn. And this crazy multiplier is multiplicative. So this one is actually way more busted than I thought it was. I thought it just added 70% and I was like, this card fucking sucks. But multiplicative, it makes this go to absolutely bonkers numbers. And if you get the multi-hitter there, you're doubling that multiplicativity. So it's just insanely good. And any multiplier is going to be to its base damage. So even if I were to scale this up, it is not going to take that new big number. It's just going to take the base. So the double hit ends up being the best. And Lift Anchor is completely bonkers. And then last is her Ego skill, which she does a big nuke for 6 cost. Yeah, 6 cost, and then 50% damage by number of beneficial effects owned. I usually can't stack this very high, but if you have a team setup where you get a lot of buffs, probably like a Veronica team, That would be pretty solid to get a bunch of powers out there. Then you could probably get this number pretty decent. Similarly to Owen, as far as partners go, she is a striker. I think I forgot to mention that, but for 4 stars, Ratochka is going to be your pick. Deal more damage when you play costs of 2 or more, which Anchor Shot is, and then you get the little boost there for the total point cost of her attack cards, which they're usually pretty expensive, so you'll get a pretty decent boost there. And then as far as 5 stars go, Asteria goes without saying. This is her like rate up partner. So cost of 2 or more, 25% more damage, crazy, and then 10% extra damage for pulverized cards, which Anchor Shot is. So perfect plug and play for her, but then Scarlet is also pretty decent for her too. Card was used immediately before, was from the assigned combatant. You get 15% damage, which stacks up to 2 times, and if you get all of her buffing cards, that would be 2 cards played beforehand, so you get the 30% right there. And when the assigned combatant uses 2 or more cards, they gain focus, which is his buff that gives attack card damage 20% more. And it looks like this does not have a cap stack unless that changes when you're actually in game. Actually, looking at it again, I think this is like a one and done thing, not a stackable thing. Not that this would really be irrelevant on Haru if it did stack. But if this is all multiplicative, then this would be a 50% damage boost compared to Asteria's flat out 35. Granted, this is 35 whenever, and this is conditional, meaning you'd have to have like your buff cards to play beforehand and make sure you don't play anything else in between. But if this is multiplicative, Scarlet is actually the better one in general. And then Asteria is just the easier one to plug and play. But as far as ego skills go, I like Asteria's a lot more, plus 20% damage of the next attack card used by the assigned combatants for the total cost of all cards in the hand with a cap of 10. And you know, Haru's cards are pretty expensive, so you'll usually get at least, let's see, you'll get like at least 4 stacks typically. And then Scarlet here, hers is okay, does some damage, but has a higher EP cost at 3, Asteria's is at 2. But you get the 10% assigned combatant's attack card damage per buff owned, which Haru, you know, her ego kind of plays off of that, getting a bunch of buffs and then scaling off of the buffs owned there. So again, it would just depend on what is multiplicative and what is additive, but as far as egos go, I like Asteria's way more. At least in boss fight scenarios. Actually, Scarlet's might be better as far as like hallway fight, standard, and elites go. Oh, and I just realized that 10% multiplier is actually from her potential here, so it just boosts the damage of her basic cards. I think it doesn't show, but it is the 2-drop basic card she has as well, which also gives that 10% damage multiplier when you use those for Anchor Shot. Similarly to Owen, this will be useful as far as like early chaos runs go. This is just a boost to her basic attacks that are not Anchor Shot, so these are okay. And then this one is an actual boost to Anchor Shot itself. So this one is crazy good. 20% more damage if you have attack greater than 1k. So this one, very good. And then you want to just dump into her unique damage and then crit. So these 4 are definitely her most important ones. And as far as memory fragments go, this time I'm actually going to go over some other sets that you could consider. But I actually, her and Owen just overlap really nicely. They both have expensive cards. So a Line of Justice, which gives you the 20% more crit chance on cards that cost 2 or more, and then 25% crit damage on the 2 set here. So pretty good. You can see this is his Owen set. This is like fully built, but you can see here I actually have passion damage here. So this is actually completely worthless, but it is all still pretty good. Once I get her a better piece here, then this will actually be an even more impressive little showcase. And you can see here now without the potentials and without like fully optimizing gear, and I do have the 4th slot being main stat into crit chance. We're looking right now at 41% crit chance. The crit damage, I actually have no idea how good or bad of this multiplier is, but 41% crit chance is very good with the set bonus now. Getting an additional 20% whenever we play a 2-drop, so we're looking at 60%. We have a pretty high chance of critting whenever she plays Anchor Shot. So one consideration here is this 2 set, which increases damage dealt to targets inflicted with agony by 10%. Thank you, I think it was to Apex on stream for pointing this out, but you can easily apply agony with like plenty of the weapons in a chaos run. I will apply agony for you, so this can be a consideration over something like the crit damage if you just want the damage amp instead and you don't really rely on the crit itself. There's also the Scarab set here, which increases damage shield and healing of basic cards by 20%. It won't affect your entire kit, but Anchor Shot should be considered a basic card in those starting cards there. So this should actually boost it by 20%. I would have to test it myself to see if it actually does, but another good consideration there, as well as just getting attack instead of going into the crit direction. As for main stats and substats, it should go without saying. For the DPSs, we're going to look at 4th slot. You're going to want attack, crit chance, or crit damage. I usually like crit chance. With this set specifically, getting you up to that 60% plus. Very nice there. Next slot, you're going to want justice damage or attack percent. Either one is going to be good. Probably wanting the justice damage specifically, but if you want like one set to move around between people easier, then you could just go for attack instead. And the last slot, you want main stat attack there. And then for the substats, again, I still don't really know any easier way of looking at substats, but here you're gonna want crit damage, crit chance, and attack percent. And then again, for the last slot, the only real options you can go for is going to be like ego recovery or flat attack. Now, as far as her egos go, none of them are too crazy except for the second dupe. The second dupe is absolutely nuts, but first one, we're looking at damage from lift anchor increases from 70% to 100% until used. That is her mythic card that buffs by 70%. Again, that is multiplicative, so now getting another 30% multiplier, essentially just doubling the damage that it does now. So really cool, very solid if you end up getting that dupe there, but the E2 is it's just crazy, at least as far as like the scaling attacks go, but even otherwise, this is still pretty dang good. But Anchor Shot can be used even without sufficient cost, so you can use this at 1 AP or 0 AP. Cards used with this effect consume all remaining AP for every 1 AP less than the original cost, minus 40% damage. Again, this is multiplicative, so you do get a huge damage drop off. But as far as like these stacking ones go, you can stack up potentially, 3 stacks of an Anchor Shot in 1 turn. So that is a pretty bonkers ult. Not necessarily for its damage, but that stacking potential. Very cool to see there. Third dupe here buffs her ult, deals plus 100% damage, and the damage increase per beneficial effect is owned to 20%. So now it does 450 instead of 350, and it'll scale 70% more damage for every buff instead of 50. Pretty whatever dupe there. Whenever this one is another good one. Whenever Haru uses an Anchor Shot card, gain 1 power supply. As a buff that stacks 3 times and gives her 20% more attack card damage. Again, if multiplicative, insane. Actually, her E4 is pretty crazy if this is multiplicative. If it's additive, then this is actually pretty balanced and not really that good. Then we have the basic upgrade there, and then at E6, damage reduction for Anchor Shot used with insufficient cost is changed to 20% per AP, for 1 AP spent less than the original cost. Yeah, that's written weird. But yeah, so it just halves the negative reduction you get off of the E2. So once you get it to E6, then actually the reduction becomes so much less that it's actually some pretty solid damage you're still going to be putting out. So E2, E4, E6, all pretty damn good. But yeah, the E2 is pretty nuts. It also just makes it a lot more flexible where you get into runs where you hit an epiphany and it isn't the combo 1 extra hit. So then it makes stacking those other cards a lot easier. Now for neutrals, I can give some suggestions here, but honestly, Haru just wants to play Anchor Shot as much as possible, so everything else is just kind of eh. I wouldn't really recommend putting many neutrals in there unless you really need her to have some neutrals, you're trying to build a farm save data, or you feel you really need the additional like AoE when it comes to hallway fights or bosses, in which case we could always recommend Overwhelm. Sacred Strike can always be good just to get an easier break and then get an AP back, so you just get some free damage out that way. But yeah, otherwise I wouldn't really suggest many neutrals on her. I guess I could suggest neutrals that you would like to see on other characters for her, but this is really just in general for any character. I mean, like Gear Bag is a no-brainer for other characters, you definitely want to see that. And the only other ones I could really think of that are directly beneficial to Haru's game plan is Sadism. Sadism can be kind of bad though. It does give you that vulnerability, so at least somebody will be able to apply it. I'd rather apply this somewhere else though, because it also reduces the cost of attack card by 1 for 1 turn. And if you are running the set that gives you the 20% crit damage or 20% crit rate for playing 2 costs or higher, and you play this card and it hits Anchor Shot, that means you're losing out on that 20% crit chance. So I like to get vulnerability elsewhere. But otherwise, Rally is always good to see. Attack here is really good to get out Anchor Shot or some other attack on an off turn that you don't draw any of her other pieces to do more Anchor shenanigans. Yeah, that's about it. So I would mostly say stay away from neutrals for Haru. And then we'll show off casually just how easy it is to put out damage with Haru. This is a save I have. I think it's the only save I have with combo hits, but we also have Anchor Pointer, which does that apply vulnerability that I mentioned earlier. Love that. So it just sets up for you right there. And then Power Charge can also apply to vulnerable AoE, which is also pretty dang cool. Oh, and then Charge Energy. I got a God Epiphany on that one, but it is just the 30% damage amp. We get the draw, but it also plays for free, so very cool there. So we're going to try and just line up those two buffs and then go crazy with Anchor Shot. So here we can actually show off with like none of her multiplicative buffs and just getting one vulnerability here. So first hit will be vulnerable, second will not be. Actually, we'll do it on one of these little guys because we the main boss has like some big damage reduction. So you can see here just 600% outright. And critting with vulnerability is 1200 damage. So if those were both vulnerable hits, both critting would have been a casual 24 with no other buffs yet. Alright, I realize that boss is a pretty bad showcase unless I can remove all of his damage reduction stacks, but you can see here we have enemies with 2 stacks of vulnerable, so both hits are going to hit vulnerable stacks. They are blue weak, so we should be doing more damage there, and they're actually going to have shield, so we're going to get bonus off of the pulverize. So this would be her ideal scenario here, and we will go ahead. I hope I don't run out of turns here, but we're going to... Now let's start with playing this. We'll apply vulnerability, get Anchor Shot back out, go ahead and buff by the 30% here. And then we will go ahead and do Lift Anchor at base, so 70% multiplicative, and actually I could show that damage right now. So we're at 401% here. Go ahead and buff that up. We're now at 609, hitting twice. And then with the vulnerability, that's actually 1338. So I don't know, I guess we pick our poison now. With Pulverize, so 16 and 14. That was 3000 damage in her ideal scenario with no crits. I'm really sad that that didn't crit. Let me see if I can do it again. Okay, unfortunately we did get weakened, so we will have to burn the barrel buff here. We'll go ahead and do that, and we'll get to buffing. So on base, 312, buff 30%, buff 70, and hopefully it crits this time around. 1338. And the second hit crit at least, so 2400. If they both crit, that would have been 4800, nearly 5k off of that card alone. Also, I'm realizing I just wasted stamina, but it was for the sake of the dang showcase. Now, those were semi-ideal scenarios, and that was with this weapon that gives 15% more damage to enemies before they act. But when you're cycling, you actually draw into these cards a lot because they all have retain, which makes it very good to set up for those turns. Anchor Pointer being able to pull Anchor Shot back out. So being able to actually pull this off pretty consistently is pretty easy. And even when you can't pull off like the perfect scenario, even just being able to put out the Anchor Shot and it critting, you're still going to be doing, you know, upwards of like 2000 plus damage still. So it's still crazy good no matter how much you're buffing or how little you're buffing. Anchor Shot and Haru is just that crazy. But yes, I do love this build. This is damn near my perfect build. Maybe if we could get duplicates of some of these cards, like duplicating Lift Anchor would be pretty crazy. Duplicating Charge Energy would be pretty crazy. But otherwise, I really like this compared to my other builds that don't have the combo hits and then have a bunch of other unnecessary cards. Keeping the deck nice and small was perfect for me, so dang near ideal besides this not being the higher multiplier. Otherwise, compared to my other saves, I don't even feel like I should be showing these off because this one is just so much better than those, and it's only 35k. And for some ideal teams, it's going to change from scenario to scenario, but ideally, she's going to want what every other DPS wants, and that's Mika. Literally everybody wants Mika, so I mean, this is a no-brainer here. But otherwise, you want somebody who's either going to draw you a bunch of cards, buff you a lot more, and that's what Veronica kind of perfectly fits. She has a lot of powers to remove those cards out of your deck, so you can then see Haru's cards a lot more often, as well as Mika's AP generation, and you get some additional damage from Veronica as well. So I think this one is going to be my ideal team for Haru, at least as far as making her output as much damage as possible. You could, of course, do something like Ray instead, but Haru doesn't really have like a lot of hits that she does, so I feel like Ray isn't nearly as good and beneficial as somebody like Veronica, who not only draws you cards but removes her own, and does some pretty good damage of her own. But we of course have to give a little special throw in for Cassius for the draw power. And then honestly, it's funny, after seeing some other people's like meme save datas, I made one myself for Beryl, which is just duping her candy bar. So she actually can get you some pretty good draw power too, but it's not nearly as consistent as other players in that realm. So I like Veronica more and Cassius more. But yeah, I think Mika's a stay-in just to help her pull off all of her combos pretty consistently. And then you can also actually consider a funny one, which is Rinoa. If you get the Epiphany on Haru, oh, it completely removed her. If you get the Epiphany on Haru where you discard all other combatant cards, you can actually generate a bunch of bullets and then get extra damage from Noah off that way. But that's a pretty niche build, so yeah, if I had to recommend anything, it's definitely this, and then you just swap out Veronica if you don't have her for some other drawing potential or, you know, whatever else you like to slot in, like somebody for some defensive or offensive purposes. So to answer the million-dollar question of whether or not you should pull Haru, of course, she is just the kind of classic big damage launch banner character, so I'm going to say no, you don't need her, but considering that the blue DPS category is basically unfilled without Haru, she does fill that niche if you feel like you need that or you want that for something like base-in content, and she does put out a lot of great damage. So if you want a really strong DPS, and more specifically you want a really strong blue DPS, then you definitely can't go wrong with Haru, in my opinion. Sorry, Beryl. That's about it. Hopefully this was helpful for somebody. Thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.